Thank you very much, Kelkarji, for this brief introduction. I extend my gratitude to Sri Mashelkarji also for having given me this opportunity to talk to you. Also, my good evening and respects and regards to all other global leaders who are participating in this meet today. I think even at the stage where we are, addressing an issue, addressing a topic like India's approach to economic recovery in the post-pandemic world itself is in a way a challenge, because we are talking about an ongoing process. It has not come to an end. I don't have the benefit of hindsight. I am still going through it with an intention of coming up with solutions which are going to be actually delivering on the ground. So India's approach, thank you for saying that it is unique. It is unique in that you're looking at a very diverse country. You're looking at a country where development is not comparable in all the regions. You're very clearly looking at a country where income disparity is a serious issue, where governments will also have to, every now and then, tailor make their policies and also the intervention schemes that you plan, so that you're not just being inclusive, but you're sensitive to what is a very critical issue in terms of economic well-being, the income disparity. So that is one of the things which brings in a certain feature into the planning, which makes our planning slightly different from many others. And also on certain other matters of global concern, we certainly like to play, and which has been a tradition in this country, to play the, let us say, the leader in having to voice the concern of the poor and also countries which are still aspiring to develop at a pace which probably will be denied because of a pandemic of this nature. So India always tries to understand that it has a moral responsibility to be able to speak for these countries and share some of the burden which countries need to handhold one another at times of crisis like this. And that is the reason why when you plan, you look into the humanitarian considerations, like the way we see that we have a role and a moral role to play when it comes to giving humanitarian assistance to a suffering Afghanistan. Similarly, even when Afghanistan had an elected government and there was a level of peace prevailing, we were very keen participants in the development agenda of Afghanistan. If that is the closest example, so is the example to be taken from various African countries where India actively engages in many of the development participation activities, sharing of vaccine and so on. So I'm going back to harp on that word, unique in its approach, particularly at a time where you're coming out of the pandemic which has hit everybody, but within India, you're looking at different levels of development and also taking up this duty that over the generations, several governments in India have taken up for being with, standing by, and hand-holding countries which are similarly placed like us. So if that is given as an assumption right at the beginning, and we take that on board, the way in which we have planned to come out of the pandemic, and also keeping in mind that we are looking at an India which is moving closer to being at 100 years of India's independence. So there is a greater importance being played for these 25 years, which lead towards India at 100. And India at 100 is something which is very, very distinct in that India at 100 will still be a very young country. Youth who are going to be below 35 are now in a very big number, but towards India at 100, that number probably also will proportionately keep coming down. However, they will be in their productive age group, and for them, we need an India which will have adequate infrastructure of such nature that can be, for today, a futuristic, laying of the foundation for a futuristic India, which will be technology infused. And we recognize the fact that today Indian population is very tech savvy, irrespective of where they are, whether in rural or in urban or semi or fully, literate. So there are very many positive indicators which I want to take on board, even as a plan for the recovery. One of which is being the technical readiness with which technical adaptability happens, whether in payment, whether in using their telephone to order for their goods, or when government's own entitlement messages reach people saying your money has been up there, DBT to your account, or when food grains come to the ration shop with an SMS given to your phone. There are ways in which people have shown that they're quite happy to take on technology. But the larger message here is India moving to 200, India moving to 100, also making up for the youth aspirations, is going to have very many possibilities. But as we are looking at today, we have to be realistic given the global situation that is developing. As it is, we have had good commitments made by the Honorable Prime Minister towards climate change. The COP26 meeting, where India committed itself for transitioning from fossil fuel to green energy, itself requires a very high degree of commitment, both in terms of money and also the process of shifting away from fossil fuel to greener energy, which requires a lot of investing in people, investing in building awareness, investing political capital to tell that these transitions are going to be critical for us as we grow into the newer era post the pandemic, which requires both commitment from the political leadership and also the money which is so required for investing in this transition. It also requires a lot of private industry participation. And therefore, this itself is a major commitment that India has given. And therefore, India's approach to economic recovery is going to have the green energy transition itself as one of those very big factor for which investments will have to be made, and continuous monitoring so that we are able to achieve the goal. So if I were to put in the form of 3 pillars which will hold this economic recovery approach of India, if I were to put it into a 3-pillar kind of a structure, we are building the roof of India at 100 with 3 pillars. The first one, where I've said transition towards greener energy and investing in them, and also the strength of that pillar is going to depend on people adapting it, the cost of this transition being kept affordable, and therefore this itself is going to be a big commitment for this government. And also from next year, every time when the budget is made, that will be a big feature in which India will have to invest, which means that many of your old thermal power plants will have to be gradually converted. You'll have to depend less on coal, although ironically, India is still rich in coal endowments, which is still not adequately mined. So if I were to get into that pillar a bit more in detail a bit later, so that's my first pillar on which my recovery plan would rest. First, not in terms of priority, equally all the 3 pillars will have their priority. The second pillar is the kind of infrastructure that India needs, be it in soft human power or the infrastructure which is hard, dimensional, where you're looking at building bridges, roads, ports, and so on, creating the assets on which India will actually have all its economic activity churn around, and the human resource will have to be tailored and also skilled to meet the requirement of living with and also productively utilizing the infra which is being created, be it digital or be it hard civil constructions. You need manpower to service all of them in this era. So that infra itself will mean investing in hard infrastructure, equally readying manpower to use them and also to service them as much as exploit them. So I'm looking at the second pillar, which has both human element and also the hard asset creation element. So that is my second pillar. The third pillar is the health and education component of India's population. Now, for which there are so many different aspects which simultaneously get into it. Providing for health, which means health infrastructure. Providing for health also means that I need more doctors, nurses, paramedics, and so on, for which my university education should have the capacity. I will have to invest in it, not alone by the government, but also to create policy space with which I'm able to draw private investments also to given capacities in particularly the STEM areas. And there, obviously, we'll have to look at gender parity. It cannot be so skewed to have only male, education from school, primary to higher education, and particularly into STEM. We need to give emphasis on getting women from all areas and communities to participate in that kind of education. So when I say health and education, I'm equally talking about building capacities in school, creating such soft power through the human resource training and skilling and the qualifying, and equally making sure that there are assets being created through use of good technologies for good hospitals, which can promote health tourism, which is an expression I use, but even today I find a lot of patients from some of our neighbors who come to India, for whom, if only a digital approach to medical facilities is provided, from wherever they are, India can benefit them with the advice that we give. Also to ensure that the quality of education need not be just regulatory, but also enhancing the quality can also be a role in which many of our experienced thinkers and educationists can come together, and bringing digital education itself ensures that the options are wider rather than when you confine it to digital. So the three pillars that I would invest in, and that is what I've invested this time as well, is to make sure that your infrastructure is good, that your health and education is very good, and the digital adaptation is something which I have to keep in mind in both these contexts, and not forgetting the commitment to climate agenda. So if I've sort of collapsed everything that I want to do in my recovery path, these are the three elements into which I will put all my resources in. But in this, the most important spirit which will govern is the center and state working together. India, after all, is a large state, so many provinces, each of which have their own assemblies into which elected people are sitting and governing that particular region. And that region has its autonomy to do so many different things with the language, with the culture, unique to them. So the three pillars that I talk about for India to hold up in India at India 100 will have to be grounded in the states. These three pillars cannot float. They'll obviously be riveted to the ground, and the riveting will have to happen in the states. So everything that government will have to do will have to keep in mind that the ground on which it is kept is constantly strengthened. So the strengthening of the ground means the center and the state will have to work together to have these three pillars held in such firmness that India at 100 will be able to strongly build on itself and also energetically have its youth participate with good education and good health, and making sure that the manpower that we create is going to be able to service the world all over. The achievements during this pandemic period, particularly in the vaccine development, is a reward that India's faced and India's reaped for the several years and probably even decades of investing in medical or in the pharma industry. The pharma industry went through a good phase, and because of predatory pricing of countries abroad, I'm not taking any one particular country's name, but predatory pricing by countries outside of India, which ate into the market which is developing in India. Many of the capacities which got built were evaporated. They were either taken over or they couldn't compete anymore with predatory pricing. Now, the pandemic has given us an opportunity to understand that, and we have restored a lot of strength into that area where inherently India had a capacity. Now we are coming into making sure that our APIs and KPIs are available for our own bulk drug industry, and therefore that segment is getting a lot more strength. And the vaccination being produced in India has actually made us all sit up, understanding this is an area in which we should be giving high concentration, investing in R&D, so that India can address global health needs with this lead advantage that we have. And therefore, India's economic recovery, which will be painted with these kind of achievements, whether you're looking at giving good medical care, whether you're able to produce good doctors, nurses, and also teachers, STEM being your strength, with youngsters and particularly women moving into the area, and the proof that even during a very challenging time, our scientists did not fail us, our medical research did not fail us, is a message to the entire world that we can produce and also service the world. In a way, the way in which we have used many of our apps, which came off handy during this pandemic, are less mercantile in nature. In fact, I would say they're not at all mercantile in nature, that we've made them available for countries which want to use them. These are the kind of success which I would want to strengthen. So the economic recovery is not purely looking at just manufacturing things, but also investing in R&D and making sure that manufacturing is not just tools or machine and equipments, but manufacturing is also of drugs and vaccines. Manufacturing is also of chips. Manufacturing is also of hydrogen and high chemistry material, which are so required for this country's energy transition. So this spectrum before me for ensuring that India's strengths, which got depleted for various different ways, I wouldn't want to point a finger at anything, any one particular cause, but which got depleted, will now have to be resurrected. And even the resurrection will have to be both from public and private. India has shown immense capacity in fintech. The financial technology use has had great rewards. We find very many countries today approaching us to say, how did you manage the DBT? How did you manage to have technology-driven identity given to your citizens? Of course, all this will also raise questions of how are we going to manage the privacy of citizens, but these are essentially going to come out of dialogue, and with dialogue, we'll be able to have checks and balances brought into the system. So the inherent strengths which were lost over the decades for various other reasons will have to be resurrected. And for strengthening the states and the center relationship, one big stress area, I would think, is going to be how we manage urban settlements, because India's urbanization has had very patchy success. Our economic recovery will have to be such that where excess population, which remains in underemployed jobs in the rural areas, will have to find jobs, but yet both rural and urban need that kind of fundamental infrastructure facility for a better living, will need urban facilities in rural areas and rural goodness and wellness in urban areas as well. I know, I do remember our former president Abdul Kalam had spoken about rural-urban, but that has got to be executed in some way in the next 25 years, where our youth who are now becoming the young productive age earners, income earners, need better housing, better facilities. So urbanization will have to be a lot more planned, a lot more organized. But as I said in the budget, it can't be based on, yes, it will happen, business as usual. No, it is not business as usual. There should be greater thought going to it in an eco-friendly way. We'll have to have urban facilities created in a vast number of regions of our country so that people have better living. In all this, the one emphasis will be ensuring greater digital education, better financial education, and ensuring the financial inclusion attempts will be better utilized by those who desperately need that kind of assistance. The account aggregator is an example that I would want to highlight. Even the smallest of businesses can avail through the aggregator facilities to enhance their business or better their business. These are the kind of framework policy changes which will bring in that facilitation for everybody. And therefore, I see technology as a very big, useful catalyst without negative fallouts, which we can manage to use in order that our recovery becomes transparent and available for all. So these are the broad thoughts to share with you. I hope I'm not taken too much of your given time, but India's development is going to be challenged by the newer challenges emanating in the world. Peace is being threatened. And post the Second World War, war of this significance, this impact on the globe probably is not felt, but hopefully some kind of restoration of peace at the earliest will happen, based on which recoveries can be sustainable. No one country today can plan for its recovery, particularly in an age where global value chains have already brought us closer to each other. But when the value chains are facing challenges and threats because of these kind of disturbance, our recovery, not just of India, but for countries everywhere, will be severely hampered. We need, for the welfare of the globe, welfare of humanity, to have this recovery sustainable and to have this recovery continue without any disruption. That's my expectation, with which our efforts to and our approach to recovery will be constantly made real time workable. These are my thoughts at this stage. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.